Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. So today we have a brand new featured location, Mojo World. And Mojo World is a really fun location to play around because whoever has more cards in that location gets plus 100 power. Right off the bat, you might think, put Mojo in the location, put some high power cards in the location. That way, you're going to have to cap it out to compete with your opponent. But there are cheesier ways to win this location. I have found that the hot location day or the featured location day or a new card day are the days where I really start getting excited about playing the game again because it completely changes the meta. Everything is fresh. It is like going into almost a brand new game. And so with Mojo World, I do have something in mind, and I'm going to go ahead and jump over into the deck draft, and I'll see you there. All right, yes, you are seeing this correctly. We have a mixture deck. So my first idea with Mojo World is to try to lock it down. If I can lock it down with Professor X and I have one additional card, it doesn't matter that one of those cards was Psylocke or an Iceman. It allows us to have that plus 100 power, and then all we have to do is have one other solid location to lock down the win. But we're not going to draw into Professor X every game. So how do we win Mojo World if we don't draw into them? We move their cards out. So with this deck list, we're going to be able to flood the location early, and then let's say they put a 1 or 2 cost drop in that location. Let's say they put a 3 or a 4 cost drop, or they're saving one of their drops for the very last turn. We can move some of those cards out with either Polaris, Arrow, or Magneto to give ourselves instantly plus 100 power in that lane, and then all we have to do is win one of the other locations. If we were able to Storm and Juggernaut and lock down one of the other locations in the process, then all of a sudden we have the game locked down. It doesn't really matter what power we have or what late game power play we have on the board. And so running through the deck list really quickly. First up, we have Sunspot. Sunspot is a great card to throw down into a lane, especially if you're going to cap it out with like a Professor X or a Storm, because you're going to be able to skip and gain power even after that location is locked down. So being able to add power after that fact is going to be critical in making this deck list successful. And then we have Iceman. We wanted a low-ish mana curve, and Iceman kind of helps fulfill that. Iceman is going to be able to potentially add some disruption to the opponent's play, so maybe they're doing the same thing and they want to run a Professor X, but we hit it with Iceman. Now all of a sudden it costs 6. We can drop ours before they can drop theirs, and so then we get that advantage and that upside. And then we have Angela. Sometimes we're not going to find ourselves in a Mojo World style game, and we want to be able to lock down a location. Having Angela and let's say one other card is going to be really beneficial if we do drop our Professor X there, because it will not only be the 3 power from Professor X, it'll be the additional 2 from Angela, and it helps us lock it down just a little bit easier. And even if not, she is a great card to have in a lane just by herself so that we can ramp up and get some pretty good power push in that location towards the end of the game. And then we have Psylocke. She is our high roll enabler. If we can drop Psylocke on 3, we can drop Professor X on 4, and a lot of times we can surprise the opponent with a Professor X into Mojo World when we have the card advantage with something small like an Iceman, a Psylocke, and a Professor X to easily and cheesily win the lane. And then we have Storm. Storm is going to be our secondary lane win condition. We can drop Storm on the board. We can follow that up with a Juggernaut, some of our low cost cards, maybe even Polaris if we wanted to pull cards away from like a Mojo World location. We were confident that it'd be fine, but we have a couple of follow-ups to the Storm play, and if not, we always have the ability to pull their cards out after the fact. So a lot of times Storm will force the opponent to play a 3 or a 4 cost card. Late game, we can move those cards out of that stormed location with Magneto, as long as they are not running a deck that really just floods the board. And then we have Juggernaut. Juggernaut is going to be a great card to either protect our Mojo World on the last turn or protect our Storm the turn before it locks down. If we can push all of their cards out, then all of a sudden we have a free lane, unless they're running a deck list that can go wide. And then we have my favorite hard to use card, Kingpin. So some of the games we're not going to be able to use Professor X. In those scenarios, Kingpin is going to be pretty decent for us. He's going to be our secondary win condition. We're not relying all of our hope on him, but with the movement style cards that we're operating with already, Kingpin is going to be a pretty decent card to drop. So the playline I have in my mind is we drop Kingpin on 4, we drop Spider-Man into the Kingpin lane on 5. That makes sure that the opponent can't flood it, and then all of a sudden we have a free Magneto drop, an Arrow drop to pull any cards that they drop onto the board over into our side, even a Polaris if we want to do an absolute low roll. We have a lot of potential options to enable typical Kingpin at that point. And then we have Polaris. She's going to enable us to move a 1 or a 2 cost card. Sometimes it's going to be as simple as dropping this on the last turn to give ourselves the advantage in Mojo World by having more cards in that location than they do. And then we have Spider-Man. A lockdown lane style deck list would not be complete without Spider-Man. If we can storm a location and we can Professor X a location, then all of a sudden when we Spider-Man on 5, they're not going to be able to drop any cards on the board, and so then we have complete control over that strategic advantage, moving their cards where we want them to. We get a lot of upside, even though he's a low power or a low tempo card. Spider-Man offers us a pretty unique advantage by dropping him on turn 5. Or we could always drop him into Mojo World on 4. That would allow us to drop our Professor X naturally on 5 if we don't get the ramp with Psylocke. And then we have Professor X. He is what is going to cheese us the Mojo World lane most often. If not, we do have the movement cards to cheese that lane in our favor, but Professor X is going to be the most consistent one. And then we have Arrow. She's going to be a great card if we have all of the other locations kind of controlled and locked down. She's going to be great in being able to pull their cards where they don't want them to be. And unless they can flood the board, Arrow is going to give us a pretty decent upside in forcing their cards into inefficient positions. And then finally we have Magneto. Not only is he a really strong body presence, but he also has the vulnerability of move all opposing 3 and 4 cost cards to this location. We can use this for a storm location, for a Mojo World, or just for a Kingpin trigger. If we were able to lock it down with like a Spider-Man, we can guarantee that we can move those over. We can get a lot of upside from the Magneto play here. But that is the rundown of the deck list. We are going to go ahead and jump into a few games. So first up we have Azor, and before we get too far into the game, we do get Mojo World as the first location. But before we get too far into the game, we are currently at 2,998. We are right around the corner from that 3,000 subscriber milestone. All we need is 2 more. We can absolutely get that today. And so if you're watching this video and you are not subscribed, please consider subscribing, if for nothing else than to help us reach that 3,000 channel subscriber milestone. All right, and so we're not going to drop anything on 2. And then on 3, I think we're going to try for the high roll. We're going to hope that we draw into our Professor X. And maybe, are they running a Quake? Are they running a Quake into the Mojo play? Interesting. If so, that's very interesting. And then we actually get 2 Mojo Worlds here. Super interesting. Okay, so we don't get the high roll here. I almost wonder if we need to drop Arrow mid just to make sure that they don't play into either of these. Or we can do something like a Spider-Man on the Mojo World to the right. We can do Iceman to the Mojo World to the left. And then if we get Professor X, we can lock down this one. Or we can lock down this one. We can always lock down this one and then use a Juggernaut if they play here after the fact. Ooh, so we get Kingpin, which is not our greatest ally here. But he's not the worst either. So what do you say we go with a Kingpin into this side of the Mojo World? If we need to, we can drop a Juggernaut here. Actually, let's go with the Kingpin into this Mojo World. Then we can always, no. We're gonna go with the Kingpin. We're gonna see where they play this turn or what they play this turn to see if maybe we can keep them in check. So they drop a magic, so we're going to have an additional turn. So that leaves us a little bit of flexibility, and we're going to be able to do something kind of fun. We're going to be able to do a Magneto to move their Captain America and their Mr. Negative. I think that's going to be a little bit more consistent than if we do an Arrow, because I could really see them playing their cards here this turn. To make sure that they avoid the Arrow play. So let's go with the Magneto double kill. Unfortunately, Mojo and Magic are outside of Magneto's move range, but we're still going to be able to get a pretty good kill trigger with these 2 cards. And so they do play directly into the current Mojo World, but our Magneto, since it is turn 6, our Magneto is going to go and stomp them away. That makes start tower in the middle much easier to lock down. Actually, how many cards do we think that they drop this turn? I kind of want to go Arrow. Arrow will move all of their cards into mid, and so they're not going to be able to push for the left limbo location. It's either that or we do something like a Juggernaut here or here, but that doesn't feel great either. So let's go with the Arrow play. I think that's our best bet. We're going to give them the good old thumbs up as we lock in and kind of praise a little bit. Do they flood? Ooh, what? They flood the right lane? And so Mojo World is going to be a tie instead of it being completely capped out. Ooh, we get both their Iron Man and their Mystique. So they were going to stack Mojo World, but they're not going to be able to do that anymore. The Arrow came in absolutely critical, incredibly clutch. We forced all of their power into mid, leaving their Shang-Chi, which would have killed our Magneto and swung Mojo World for them. We were able to move that and their 2 Iron Men into mid, so that they had... very little power in what was left of the Mojo World location. And of course, they didn't drop anything into Limbo, so we were able to keep that one locked down. Oh my gosh. I say we should hit 3,000 subs just off of that game alone. That one was phenomenal. I love whenever a Kingpin play works. It's very hard to make it work, but whenever it does, it is so satisfying. All right, so next up we have Ducks, and the first location is Fisk Tower, which works into our deck build, the Kingpin combination, the move style cards pretty well. And so we're gonna play Sunspot in mid and then wait it out to see what else turns up. Okay, and so they drop a Nova, but Monster Island comes in, so they're not gonna be able to destroy the Nova very easily unless they have a Killmonger. But we do know they're running some kind of destruction deck, maybe a destroyer deck, which would try to lock down a lane, which does work pretty decently for Mojo World, but we don't end up getting Mojo World this game. Interesting. We're going to be able to do a couple of things here. We can always drop our Spider-Man on 5 into Fisk Tower to try to pull over whatever card they're going to want to drop on that turn. I think we actually pull their Bucky Barnes over into the Monster Island lane or location just so that they're not able to destroy it very easily if they're not going the destroyer route. And if they are, then we have some pretty decent power push in that middle location to contest with the destroyed Bucky Barnes. And so they do drop a Deathlock, which is not going to be able to destroy the Bucky Barnes. So very, very unfortunate for them. We now can do Spider-Man. I don't think we do, but I think what we might do is drop a Juggernaut into Clintar. If they try to drop something here, we can always potentially force it over into Fisk Tower, which Fisk Tower is like an upgraded or improved Kingpin. It makes it so anytime a card is moved there, it gets destroyed. So I think we're going to try for the Juggernaut here. I don't think it goes off. We can always drop the Spider-Man into Fisk Tower on 5. It's going to make it hard for them to play on that final turn. So let's go with the Juggernaut play. Ooh, we do hit a target. Where does it go? Does it go? Okay, so it goes into Monster Island, which isn't terrible either. Oh my gosh. They're not going to be able to follow up on that rescue to get that added benefit. Oh my gosh. Guys, I don't know. So let's go with the Spider-Man into Fisk Tower this turn. We already have Monster Island locked down unless they have a way to destroy like their Nova. Let's go with the Spider-Man into Fisk Tower. That forces them to play into Clintar, where we can drop our arrow on turn 6 to destroy anything that they put onto the board. And so we know that we already have Monster Island locked down. They have Clintar locked down, but that's okay. That's all right. We are going to lock down Monster Island and Fisk Tower here. So let's go ahead and drop the arrow. Yeah, they do retreat because they don't have a way to win. We already have this one locked down for now, and so they don't have any way to push additional power. So very good game, Ducks. A lot of disruption came in, really key there. So being able to pull their card over with our Polaris, being able to push their rescue over and cap out the Monster Island lane with rescue was absolutely phenomenal. All right, so next up we have Paper Cuts. And in our starting hand, we don't have either of our 1-cost cards. We do have Angela. We also have Storm, so we're going to be able to change a location into a Storm location if we need to or if it looks like we should. So I'm going to go ahead and drop Angela into this last location since we don't know what it is. Lemuria is going to make it where she doesn't reveal until next turn anyways, so they won't know exactly what we dropped. And then we're hoping for the Mojo. Beautiful. That is exactly what we needed. So the Mojo World location is going to be a pretty nice one. Let's go ahead and drop Polaris. I don't... no. Nope, I want to save that potential move component. I'm just going to go ahead and drop Iceman. On turn 4, we're going to be able to drop a Spider-Man into Mojo World to make sure that they can't play a card there on turn 5. And then ideally by that point, we'll be able to cap it out with a Professor X. Professor X has not been cooperating with us as of lately, but we do have the Invisible Woman target for our Polaris. So if it comes down to it, we can always pull her out of that location on turn 6, kind of as a surprise play. We could always drop Kingpin and then Polaris as well. And so we're looking for our Professor X here. That's not gonna do it. Okay, so let's go ahead and drop our Sunspot into Mojo World. And then we're gonna Storm Atlantis. Not a great play line, probably not even a good play line, but actually, I don't know what order the cards will reveal. If we pull Invisible Woman out and they drop a card there on that turn, does it reveal at that point? Or, ooh, so they discard their Hela, which is definitely nice for us. I think with the flooded location, does it force them to play into the flooded lane? Because if so, we can drop Kingpin in Lemuria. We can then pull their Invisible Woman over, which will destroy it. And then whatever this ends up being is probably not going to be enough, is what we're hoping for. We're hoping that the Storm maybe baits them into playing into that location. And if not, maybe we just win that one outright. Okay, so let's lock that in. They play one card. which ends up being, what does it end up being? Ghost Rider? Ghost Rider, and they're shooting for a Hela. Okay, so we destroy the Invisible Woman. Swordmaster does come in and trigger, which is going to, oh. I was really anticipating a Ghost Rider there, and I thought it was going to be really, really clutch that Swordmaster discarded an additional card to make it less likely that their Ghost Rider would resummon their Hela, but it turns out that they just outright drop Giganto. So we won Mojo World because we had more cards. We won Lemuria because we, I mean, of course, had more power than their Hellcow. Not necessarily a crazy game, but we were able to kind of shift some of the power around. Spider-Man kind of helped us control how many cards they had in Mojo World, and then Kingpin Polaris came in clutch in moving cards out, guaranteeing that they couldn't do what they wanted. So it was just enough disruption to make it hard for them to play optimally. All right, so next up we have Hulk Smash, and Hulk Smash is representing Hydra, and so we have to destroy them. Respectively, destroy them. So let's go ahead and drop our Sunspot, I think, into, no, we don't have any great 2-cost cards that we just need to have on the board. So I'm going to hold our Sunspot. If the middle location is not Mojo World, then I'll place Sunspot into this third location. I'm very glad that I did not drop our Sunspot into Murder World. So let's go ahead and drop Angela, because we would have had to shift it with a Storm on 3, which just wouldn't have felt great. So we drop our Angela into the far right lane. We're hoping for the Mojo World to come up, but if not, we do still have some pretty, there it is, beautiful. We do still have some playroom and some wiggle room. So I think actually here, do we instead go with, we could go with changing the middle location with Storm. We could then drop our Sunspot there, and then we could just, I don't know. I like the idea of being able to have both lanes open because, yeah, we're not going to change this location with Storm because the first location is nowhere. We're not going to be able to do our own reveal abilities, and so that would really restrict us in what we can do. And so I think we're just going to go with the regular standard Angela Sunspot. We're hoping for Professor X at some point, but if we don't get it, we don't get it. And so Punisher is a 3-cost card, which can be a target for our Magneto. So into turn 4, what do we think about doing a Spider-Man? That gives us the freedom to cap out this location. On 6, we can always do an arrow to move whatever card they try to play into Mojo World out. It depends on where they play their card this turn. Okay, so they do spread it out. So we actually don't have to play a card in Mojo World next turn. We could probably pretty reliably cap it out with just these 3. Then we get Juggernaut. But what are they running? What kind of list are they running? So we can always do arrow here. That would allow us to either do a Magneto to pull out their Punisher next turn and try to force a decent amount of power. I think we're going to go with that. It's not great. Ooh, the Hobgoblin is definitely not great. So we could either do Polaris to pull, well, I think it would pull their Cable over. We could do Magneto, which is going to pull their Punisher over, which I think actually would win them that location. I don't like that. And then if we do this, there is a lot of hopium involved. This would stop them from dropping anything additional into Mojo World. We guarantee that we have this location locked down, but our downside is that we would only have Nowhere 1 by 2. So if they do drop anything in that location, then it's not going to work. Or we could do Polaris and Juggernaut. That would bring us up to a +6. Polaris would pull over their Cable, so we would tie this lane. I don't think this is great, but we're gonna go ahead and lock this one in. I think we lose this one if they play anything into no way do they not play something into Nowhere. We got very, very lucky that we were able to change Nowhere. So had they dropped Hulk over in Nowhere, they would have won. Very, very lucky. I think the Spider-Man disrupting their potential playline into Mojo World helped us guarantee we had that one locked down. Just the disruption piece of it. But overall, I think it took a fair amount of luck for us to get to this point. But nonetheless, we got there in the end. All right, and so my eyes were playing tricks on me. I honestly don't know if this is Shibodo or Shibu. Yeah, I honestly have no idea. Because the second O or D kind of looks like an O or a D. And I can't really decipher it. So here, I think I'm going to pass on turn 1, even though we do have our 1-cost cards in hand. I want to see what this location is. I want to see what the middle location is before I commit any resources there. Interesting. So we get Storm, or we get an additional energy, which means we can drop Storm. It's just a matter of, do we want to? We can drop Storm. On 3, we can drop Sunspot and Iceman, and that still leaves this open for a potential Mojo World play. so that we can either try to lock it down, or maybe we just lean into the fact that we're going to try to move their cards out of that location. Okay, so they drop a Colossus, which is interesting. Are they running a Destroyer style deck? Definitely something that I would wonder or I consider. The Nova and the Colossus means that if they drop a Destroyer, it's not going to destroy this card, and then Nova will be able to buff up their whole board. So let's go ahead and go with the Sunspot and the Iceman, and 6 cost cards actually are going to cost 1 less this game, so that's a little bit scary. If I was a betting man, I think they would probably want to drop their Bucky Barnes into the flooded location. That way they stand at least a chance of swinging it, but maybe they don't. Maybe they don't drop any resources there. Okay, and so they drop an Armor over into Titan. Interesting. So they are running a Destroyer style deck. We do have the flooded location locked down. We know that they can't go wide. So now it comes down to figuring out or kind of drawing into some of our other potential play line or potential pieces. So what we can do is actually pull that Armor over here. This is going to be so much fun. Let's pull their Armor over into Hell's Kitchen. That's going to protect their Nova from going off. They're not going to be able to really get a whole lot of upside from the Destroyer drop like they would want to. And then we still have 2 turns to kind of adjust and play accordingly. So I do like this play. Maybe they drop 1 card in Hell's Kitchen, and we end up pulling their card over and kind of foiling their plans, because they won't be able to drop Destroyer until next turn at the earliest.
Opponent snapped.
So they snapped. I went ahead and snapped back. And so they drop a Deathlock, which is, I guess, fine, because it doesn't destroy their armor, but we pull their armor over, and so now their Deathlock is no longer protected. So if I was them, I would not drop my Destroyer this turn. It's just not something I would necessarily want, but Destroyer is going to be my prime target for Titan. That's going to be where I want the biggest power push. If I was in their shoes, I would drop something like either maybe a Hobgoblin, or maybe a Hobgoblin here, or a Warpath here to try to push this power up so that we could try to win this lane as our secondary win condition. I think I'm going to go ahead and go with a Spider-Man into Titan, which is a very low power play. It is very scary to drop that there. Let's go with the Spider-Man. Let's not overthink it. Okay, so they do drop the Hobgoblin into Hell's Kitchen, which is exactly what we thought that they would do, because Destroyer is going to be the prime target here. To swing and turn that Titan location. If they drop it here, they're only going to win 1 location. They need to win 2 because they can't compete for the flooded lane. And so now all we have to do is come up over their power here. And so I think we do that by doing the Angela and the Kingpin. Super weird play line, not something you would ever really anticipate or think you wanted to do, but this is going to be 4, 5, this is going to be 7 power push, and they can't drop a card here. Otherwise, we could do something like a Magneto. Actually, we can do a Magneto anyways, right? But they turn first, they reveal first, so there's always the off chance that they drop something like a Warpath and we pull it over, which would just feel awful. So our safest play is going to be the Angela and the Kingpin. We definitely don't want to do an arrow. That defeats the purpose of us locking it down. And so, yeah, we forced them into a really difficult spot. They weren't able to play those additional cards and position their cards efficiently because of the Spider-Man play, because of the early storm. So even though we didn't get to lock down a lane with Professor X, we didn't draw into Mojo World as a location, we still had a lot of really good upside from this disruption or lockdown style list. Oh, this is going to be it, guys. I feel it. This is the run. So next up we have Dude of War. And in our starting I feel bad now. They were cordial. Oh, Dude of War, what are you doing? So they were cordial and said hello, and then we snapped on them. And so we are going to have the Psylocke ramp on 3. So all we need to do is draw into maybe an Iceman, a Sunspot, into the Mojo World location to be able to lock that one down. Ooh, Sinister London is an interesting one. Let's go with the double Psylocke drop. That is going to give us 5 energy next turn, and we could potentially lock down 2 locations. I don't know that we would want to, or that it would be beneficial, but we could. Okay, perfect. Psylocke's shot over into Mojo World, which is exactly what we needed. We don't have initiative, so if they drop 2 cards, they could potentially tie with us over here. We're gonna need a little bit of luck. Luckily, their Scorpion did push over into Kunlun. I don't think we drop Professor X. He's only 1 power because of the double Scorpion drop, which hurts so bad. Such a difficult one to swallow. But I think we do our Professor X into Mojo World and hope that they don't drop 2 cards there. Ooh, so they just dropped 1 card into Kunlun, which is beautiful. That is exactly what we needed. Thank you, Dude of War. Thank you so much. So now we have Mojo World locked down. It doesn't matter what's played where. Anybody that drops a card is gonna go here and here. So I think we do a Sunspot. No. Yes. We can do a Sunspot and a Polaris. We don't want to do the Polaris into Sinister London because then it'll pull it over here and then it'll pull it right back. We're going to be able to do a Sunspot. It's going to copy here and here. If we get lucky and they drop a card here or even here, we can pull one of their other cards. We can finish capping out the Kunlun location, and that's going to be the game. That's going to be all that they can do, and they'll be locked out of 2 lanes by turn 5, both of which we can push and win. So I really like this play line. Let's go ahead and lock this one in. Let's hope that they drop some kind of card, any card. It doesn't matter what card. Pick a card, any card, and that will be absolutely fine. They're thinking real hard here. So they don't drop a card. Very, very interesting. We do drop the Polaris. It does pull a Scorpion. They only have one more spot in the Kunlun location. Kind of unfortunately, actually, we didn't think about it. But when a card moves over here, it gets +2 power. So not great, but it is okay. It is okay. I'm going to use Spider-Man, which is which is going to lock... There's so much unfortunate disruption here. I'm going to drop Spider-Man into Sinister London. That's going to lock them out of dropping a card here or here on the final turn. That will allow us to know exactly what power we need to push. So if they do drop a card here, that's fine. If they don't, that's also fine. All right, so they did end up retreating. Had they played, we would have absolutely been able to figure out how much power we needed. More than likely, we could have passed on the final turn to buff up our Sunspot high enough to overtake them here and probably here. The Spider-Man into Sinister London when there was only 2 locations to potentially play is absolutely huge. But with that win, that is actually 6-0. We played 6 games, we won 6 games with this incredibly disruptive and fun list. Mojo World is a great enabler, but there were several games where we didn't have Mojo World and we were still able to disrupt them. Yes, those games are definitely much harder, but we were still able to disrupt them enough that we were able to sneak out the wins. And so I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave it a like and a comment down below. Let's go ahead and rein in the 3,000 subs in the comment section as well. A huge milestone for the channel and our small little community. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. As always, this has been TLSG. Later, guys.